Cool. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all our esteemed guests and panelists as we host our third and very last of the series of Women in the Arts Dialogue in celebration of Women's Month. A very special thank you to all our panelists. I'll start with Ms. Kitty Petla. Thank you as well to Ms. Mabato Monjo. Thank you to Ms. Teresa Firimeno. Thank you to Ms. Ursula Pule. And thank you to Ms. Boitumelo Twaele, and of course our facilitator, Ms. Zanele Kumalo, for joining the National Arts Council this afternoon to share with us their stories and experiences in navigating the arts for women. As we start our session, I would like us to hold a moment of silence to honor the life of the University of Fort Hare student, Ms. Nosikele Mtebeni, whose life was tragically and senselessly taken by her partner last week, and also the many lives of other women who have suffered under the guise of gender-based violence. If we can just hold a moment of silence, please. Thank you. The National Arts Council's commitment towards the transformation of women and youth in our sector is of paramount importance to us. Yesterday's disheartening figures released by Stats SA show that unemployment is at 34.4%, with Black African women making up 41% of this statistic. Coupled with the fact that we know our arts sector has been hardest hit by the pandemic, one can only imagine what percentage of the 41% is actually borne by artists themselves. I lamented last week's Women's Day series that even though our industry is the soul of our country, it is one of our least, it's one of the least funded sectors. And when I think of how artists have created enigmatic, incredible, and exceptional experiences with the little that they have, I am comforted that possibly behind these creations are women-led or managed projects. It has always been said that if you empower a woman, you empower a nation. And this is so true, as seen by these lovely women that we have on our panel today. And they will be telling you and sharing with you what it is that they've experienced through their professional trajectories as well. The theme for today's session, which is building and sustaining successful personal and business brands in the arts, is critical to how we navigate the world with COVID and beyond. It is really asking the question of how do you want to position yourself as a brand and to ensure your success in your area of expertise or passion. There will be so much to learn from today's session, and I really am hoping that everyone listening will be taking notes from this very incredible panel. Thank you, Zanele, and I wish everyone a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much, Her Royal Highness, for those words and very sobering thoughts. We've definitely never needed this more. And I'm very happy. And also having, we were just discussing earlier, having some big fan moments of the incredible women who are on this panel today. Also, I just wanted, before I introduced myself and them, I wanted us possibly to guess these fun facts and who they belong to. So we have in this panel a vinyl collector, a new mother, a sax player, and someone who loves to laugh. So please place your comments in the chat section and try and guess which fun fact belongs to which panelist. And on that note, I'd love to start by introducing Boitumelo Twaele, who is an associate lecturer at the History of Art Department at Wits University and a doctoral fellow at the Africa Open Institute for Music Research and Innovation at Stellenbosch University, working on the Hidden Years Archive project. She is also an independent curator and former journalist. Her research interests explore the intersections between jazz and art, the music and visual archives within the context of curatorial engagements and practices. She holds an MA in Heritage Studies from Wits University and is also a board member of the Association of Visual Arts and the Meta Foundation. What an incredible bio. So welcome to you, Dumi. We're thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Zanele, and I'm also excited to be here as well.
Fantastic. And then to introduce Kitty Petla, who was born and bred in the historic township of Alexandra. She is a classical dancer and a skilled dance teacher and practitioner who received her Chiketi International Teachers Qualification in 2002. She's also the CEO and founder of Ballet Africa. Her extensive traveling has seen her grace stages in all over the world, in countries and cities like Amsterdam, Switzerland, Australia, Dubai, Germany, England, China, and Zimbabwe. And more recently, she performed across Russia as the first Black dancer to embody the dying swan on stage. Kitty is a former senior soloist at the Joburg Ballet, and she's developed a radio career, which started at local community radio station Alex FM. She was featured in her own headline show, The Moonlight Cruise, on Radio 2000 until 2018 and joined Trans-Africa Radio in 2019. A great accolade is that she has been selected as one of the 21 icons of South Africa. Inspired by the life of Nelson Mandela, 21 Icons is a celebration of the lives of men and women who have shaped the world around them for the better. She has also been bestowed with one of the highest honors in South African arts and culture and was named the Standard Bank Young Artist of the Year 2019 for dance. Hello, Kitty.
Hi, Zanele. Thank you so much for having us. I'm really looking forward to this afternoon. I think it's a really great panel of very powerful women. So I really appreciate this opportunity. And thank you so much to the National Arts Council as well for the invitation.
Thank you very much for joining us. And then on to Mabato Monzo, who is a multi-award-winning writer and director. Her short film, The Groom's Price, premiered to a viewership of over 4 million on SABC, and her documentary series, Women on Sex, was critically acclaimed internationally. Her subsequent short films have been selected in various international film festivals, including the Seattle International Film Festival, Pan-African Film and Arts Festival, and Durban International Film Festival, and that's just to name a few. Her work in television includes drama series on MTV, Netflix, and BET. Mabato has served as a judge for the SAFTAs, the South African Film and Television Awards, and the Writers Guild of South Africa Muse Awards, also amongst many others. Her latest project is directing the Holly Shorts Best Screenplay short film titled Desmond's Not Here Anymore, starring award-winning actors S. Epata Murkison, whose name you'll recognize from Law and Order, and Yolanda Ross, whose name you would recognize from The Shy. Mabato, who holds an MA in script and screenwriting from Falmouth University, has worked as a script development mentor at the Mnet Magic in Motion Academy for over 4 years. As a consummate creative and champion of the Black female experience, Mabato's work hones in on the essence of everyday existence, the beauty, the agony, and the politics of what it means to be a Black woman today. Welcome, Mabato.
Hey, thank you very much, Zanele. It's good to be on the panel, and thank you to the NSC for having us.
Fantastic. Next up is Teresa Kutala Firmino. She is a Johannesburg-based artist whose work examines the construction of dominant histories and the absences they present. This active rewriting unfolds through her multidisciplinary process. Teresa studied at the Wits University. She did her BA/FA in 2016 and her master's in 2018. Recent solo presentations include, but are not limited to, Pseudo Restitution, which was presented at World Art Gallery in Cape Town in 2019, and Children of a Lesser God at MM Art House in Johannesburg, also in the same year. In 2020, Teresa presented Black Melancholy, Negotiating Trauma at the Investec Cape Town Art Fair, a series of paintings grappling with the ways women of the Pomfret community have survived beyond the traumas enacted on their bodies. Teresa extends these questions of identity through a collective thinking process with artist and collaborator Helena Wabembe. Together they form the collective Kutala Topeto, which means to see beyond something soft. Hi, Teresa. You're on mute, but it's...
Sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm excited for the conversation and thank you for the invite.
Lovely to have you here. And then last but not least, we have Ursula Pule, who defies statistics as a successful woman of color, especially in a competitive world dominated by the patriarchy. She started her career in the creative industry as a fashion designer. She excelled in the space, not only at honing her skills, but incubating the qualities of a leader, which arguably led to her graduating from Northwest School of Design in the top 6 in her class. Ursula's vast knowledge in design and meticulous attention to detail made her a crucial asset to the success of Nungu Diamonds, where she currently holds the title of Creative Director. Having been in the diamond business for only 3 years, it was a huge feather in her cap to be invited by the De Beers Group to be on the panel of international judges for their annual De Beers Shining Light Awards 2018-2019 jewelry competition. Her mission within the diamond industry, apart from excellence in jewelry, has evolved into educating the enlightened as to what to expect from a young, driven, and previously disadvantaged female entrepreneur. So a warm welcome to you, Ursula.
Thank you so much for having me, Zanele. Thank you.
Fantastic. And warm welcome to the whole panel. If I can just ask you perhaps to unmute yourself, just in case I point a question to you and you forget to unmute. But yeah, if you have any issues about noises in the background, feel free to just mute yourselves again. So I would like to start just broadly maybe by asking a general question. Maybe let's start with Kitty about what you feel either a personal brand or a professional brand is to you.
A personal brand for me basically means you got to be in pursuit of being a master of your craft. Basically, you got to identify what you do. You got to identify what your craft is. And I think on a business side of things, in terms of your business brand, you got to understand the politics, right? Because there are politics everywhere.
Yeah.
And we are all in an industry where us as women, we've got to understand those politics. And in order for us to use that, I think, and I always get so hammered for this, but I've got to speak freely. I think one thing that is so paramount about women is that we're very intuitive, right? That's one thing that we can use into our business skills. But yet, I think we need to also teach ourselves to be less emotional. Yes, it could be a powerful thing, but yet it could be a downlet at some point. So I think it's understanding the politics on a professional scale, and on a more personal scale, I definitely think you've got to be the master of your craft. Understand the basics of your work. You just always got to be in competition with yourself. Look at yourself first, because you cannot compete with the person next to you, right? So we are all in pursuit of being the best at what we do, which is who you are as a person, as a personal brand. Yeah.
I see you nodding, Ursula. It reminds me of the saying I wrote down actually before our talk: be yourself, everyone else is taken. And I think, that's exactly the individuality that you were talking about, Kitty. And your thoughts on that, Ursula?
I echo everything that she's saying, because for me, it's been such a learning experience coming into an industry that is very male dominated. And also very white male dominated as well. In this industry, my husband started as just with the diamond polishing. And so me coming in, I had to prove that I'm not just here to help. You know, sometimes you get that title when you're working with your husband that, oh, you're just helping out. Oh, that's nice. You know, and now having to build that brand, build my name, and really, really say, I'm here to stay. I know the work. And in terms of design, in terms of the product, it's something like you say, you know, from myself being an artist and being someone who's actually very interested in the jewelry business from start to finish. And then on top of that, going into it and saying, okay, I actually do understand polished diamonds. I actually do understand jewelry. And, you know, having the two honestly run parallel at all times, so that in the midst of everything, it's true, you would get lost in the politics of who doesn't like you, who thinks you're going to succeed, who thinks you're going to fail, who's waiting for you to fail. And that you know, that can become a mess, and that can actually deter you and keep you moving backwards. So, you know, having the personal brand and the business brand always running concurrently, and making sure you understand and not get lost in the mess. You know, you define yourself. I am Ursula, I am a designer, whether it's clothing, whether it's jewelry, this is what I do. And the business I am in is the jewelry business. And this is what we do in this particular business, and let those run. And that's how the brands would then stand for me.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, very, very insightful thoughts there. I also wanted to extend the same kind of question to Umabato, because as you were saying, Ursula, you come from a very male-dominated industry. I think the film industry is pretty much the same. Yeah, would you like to talk us through that, Mabato?
Yeah, it is pretty much the same. It is white, male dominated. You know, we deal with a lot of things in storytelling. Obviously, we tell people stories, we influence perceptions about certain people, about certain worlds. And you know, when you're coming into that space, there's so many things that you have to deal with besides just yourself. As a director, I know that as soon as I get onto set, the first thing I have to do before I even work is to get the trust, is to convince everybody that I do know what I'm doing. I do have a right to be here. And also piggybacking on the fact that I have a background as an actor, there's already pre-judgments about, oh, she thinks, you know, oh, here's this male actors, why don't you just perform? Don't direct, you know? So there's those elements to gain the trust. You already step onto the space as somebody who is deemed untrustworthy, somebody who can't deliver, somebody who's not going to be able to deal with all the different elements that happen within a space where you deal with a lot of emotion, performances, people's stories, personal things like that. And then you have to kind of wrestle with history as well, of how stories have been told, of how Black women have been portrayed, of how Black people have been portrayed, and all of that. So there's your personal journey on one hand as the professional on set, and then there's the history that you have to deal with in terms of the lens and the gaze that you have to wrestle with from the past to today. So, you know, the most important thing when you're telling a story is to understand what we call the controlling idea or the theme. And that's almost like in tandem with brand, if you, in inverted commas. What are you saying about a people? Why are you saying that about those people? Why are you saying it now? So you're dealing with branding on really multiple levels all at once.
That's a lot to bear. I mean, considering that you're trying to weigh up your, as you said, your personal brand, your professional brand, and also carrying the history of what's happened in the past and what you want to create personally in the future. And how do you manage that when it comes to your online presence, particularly social media? Do you feel comfortable sharing your personal journeys there? Or do you try and focus more on your professional brand?
For me, I don't draw a distinction really. But I think social media has been quite instrumental in my career. And in storytelling, at least in my understanding, you come to tell a story because you've got something to say. So at a certain point, it is hard to kind of separate yourself from what it is that you want to say. Social media for me was instrumental in that it allowed me to become a filmmaker, and all those doors that were closed for me because A, I was an actor, B, I was acting on a certain type of show, whether it's a soapy, people already judge and, commit to those judgments about what you can or can't do. So when I created the web series, Women on Sex, it allowed me to, first of all, talk about what I wanted to talk about as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, as a content creator, and to put it on a platform that nobody can say yes or no to. Also, in terms of the themes and the controlling ideas I wanted to deal with and the types of people I wanted to have on the show, there was sort of no gatekeeper who could say, no, I can't do this, and no, I can't do that. But what it also meant is that I was responsible for everything, all the good, all the bad, all the ugly. I had to take ownership and answer for all those choices that I made. But without that space of social media, I wouldn't have been able to kind of create a path for myself as a filmmaker and a storyteller on the terms that were my own.
I'd love to ask you that as well, Teresa, because I mean, I've seen there's been a shift, especially for artists who are gallery represented, and how they present themselves, their own personal brands on social media. How's that been for you, and how have you managed a kind of gatekeeping around your particular brand?
I think for art, as in visual arts, I think it's a little bit, when it comes to social media, I think it's a little bit difficult because, art often is seen as like elitist industry. And then you do have artists that started off in social media and they're doing great now, but they are almost portrayed as trendy, and most artists, or maybe not most artists, or some artists don't want to be trendy. They want to be history makers and change, and they want to be part of the canon that is. So, and then it's true, like the industry, even in the arts, visual arts, it's white male dominated in terms of galleries, in terms of who are the artists that makes more money. And then when you present yourself as a Black female artist, even on social media, I think you have to be like really careful, and you have to be very clear of what type of artist you want to be and how you want to be presented. So for me, social media has become a way for example, for galleries and auction houses and art fairs to kind of share their work because they can't have audiences in their spaces. But in terms of sharing my own work, I think I've stepped back from social media because of the politics of being trendy, especially as a Black female artist. I think now there's a great interest on Black female artists, and I'm very cynical about it, and I'm like, how long will that interest last, and is it sustainable? So, and then it's like, what does it mean if you have those questions and you are seen as as artists that made it on social media? So I think for art, social media works a bit different. It can definitely launch your career, but the question is, how long is it sustainable? Will you be able to be in the art industry in 3 years' time?
Yeah, that's a very fascinating point. Tumi, if you wouldn't mind touching on that a little bit, that kind of thing of Black women or Black artists or Black film directors, makers, dancers being this trend. How do we deal with that, and how do we kind of shape our brands to kind of counteract that trendiness?
Look, I'm a firm believer that the work speaks for itself. I really, really strongly believe that. Of course, I think social media has its place and it can sort of advance what you do, but I think you have to be very strategic about how you utilize it. and of course, in as much as well, just to go back to what I said, that, you know, the work speaks for itself. It does not mean that you are never not going to fight about it, right? Or defend it. So I think there'll always be those moments where you still have to defend that your craft, and I think that is sort of the challenge of being women in the arts, right? It comes with sort of these baggages, and I think Mabatu mentioned that, you know, you have to gain trust, and then you also still have to prove to people that actually I'm really good at what I'm doing, and I deserve to be here. But you know, that being said, I don't think that there's anything that beats what the craft says about itself on its own merit. I mean, for the longest time, people knew my name, but they didn't know what I looked like. And this was when I was a journalist, right? So I think my byline spoke for me. What I wrote spoke for me. And they didn't need to know what I looked like, or what I sounded like, or what I like to eat, you know? And of course, I suppose that as time went on, you know, being in different platforms, engaging in other spaces, when then people would know that, oh, that is you, then it's like, oh, you wrote that article or something like that. So, you know, I think those moments then, I think, then do attest to the fact that when you are single-minded about what you want to do, and you have a clear indication about what you want to do, that will always speak for you. Yeah.
So do you feel uncomfortable about the idea of a personal brand, or do you think a personal brand will happen whether you strategize or not, purely by the work that you do? Or is there a space for kind of both to exist comfortably?
I think my discomfort is really just coming from the perception and sort of maybe the parochial way of this concept of a personal brand, right? And I think there are connotations about it, especially in relation to social media, for example. When you start speaking about something like a personal brand, it automatically sort of celebrity driven, or it is celebrity like, or there's a particular expectation
number
about
of followers.
Exactly, right? So I think from that perspective, then it would make me uncomfortable, because that's not what I think a personal brand is all the time. That is not to say that those who earn their money or make their living like that are people who are less than or whatever. But I mean, in terms of the work that I do, if then I had to sort of take on these concepts of personal brands, then that's definitely something that I'd be very wary of and concerned about, sort of that perception that I'm talking about. Yeah.
And for you, Kitty, how has that journey been in terms of your personal branding or professional branding? Because I mean, your career has spanned a long time, perhaps even before kind of Instagram became, you know, one of the larger platforms. How do you feel about your professional and personal branding?
So I've got to literally give a round of applause to Dumi for saying what she did, because I totally live by that let the work speak for itself. Everything else must quieten down, you know. You can't see, this is, I think it's a bit watered down, this whole personal brand, which I totally agree with Dumi once again. I mean, if you look back in the days when you used to read a novel or a book that you loved, there never used to be pictures at the back of the book of who the author is. But how the story was manufactured, basically the service of the book really was fulfilling to you without having to know the face of who wrote this book. Which takes me back to why I'm so in love with radio, because it is the theater of the mind. And actually that's what a brand is all about. So for me, I have no issues if someone doesn't know what I look like, right? But let the work speak for itself, you know, because at the end of the day, you are a product, you are a manufacturer, you are the service. You got to service yourself first in order to understand best how to manufacture. So for me, that's what a brand is, you know, and once you understand the manufacturing part of your brand, then you will give birth to your identity. So that's why for me, social media for me is purely professional. It's not about how, listen, you don't really have to see my face. Most of the time, if I post something, it is of a performance because I want you to get the full context of what the brand is all about.
Yeah.
You know, the full body of the work speaking for itself, you know, in a ritualistic sense. So I totally concur with what Dumi's saying. Let the work speak for itself, and that should be what is operative in our conversation this afternoon.
Yeah. I like that idea, and I think maybe for people who have a discomfort in personal brands and social media, they might rely on more traditional media spaces, but that is a hard nut to crack. If you don't have a strong name behind you, say you don't want to be on Facebook, you don't want to be on Instagram, how else then do you market yourself? Ursula, maybe you could offer some insights to how you might maybe approach a media company or gather some kind of interest or marketing around your services for those who are anti-social media.
I think that's like in my line of work, that's the $1 million question, you know, because with the onset of COVID, that's all we had, you know. By the end of the year, magazines were shutting down. People had to turn to online newspaper, online advertising. Everything was online. So, you know, it really became something where we as a company as well had to pivot and change, you know, the old trusted way of doing things, because in our youth, we're the generation that grew up with magazines, you know, we're the generation that grew up saying, hey, you know, you're a banner on the front page of the Sunday Times. So we had to unlearn that in a few months, and having to then say, okay, so, but then you have the group of people, their social media is News 24. That's it. They're nowhere else. And how do you reach them? How do you knock on their door? Because now, yes, it's easy for the Instagram and it's easy for the Twitter user, for the Facebook user. But now what about, you know, that gentleman and a woman that literally go, nope, I don't do that. I just want to see the news and then I'm done with my phone if I'm not making a phone call. So, you know, that's where you get instances, you know, for us, Google advertising really became a key entry point there, you know, because again, we had to put the product out there, you know, never mind myself, never mind what my husband was doing, but it was, what does Nungu Diamonds do? How would people want to interact with us? You know, so we had to literally restart the website from scratch, turn it into an online store, put, you know, blog information on there, put information about us, and really, really drive it. And it was so funny. My daughter, she was on her tablet playing a game, and that little Google banner at the bottom, those advertising banners popped up, and she goes, that says Nungu Diamonds. I said, no, it doesn't. She says, no, mommy, look. So that's one of the things I was like, oh, it's working, you know. So clearly, if you are new on News 24 or any other, you know, more, you know, news oriented site, we are going to pop up in that respect. And that's how we got to kind of, let me say, deviate from using now what is now traditional social media and turning into a different kind of online advertising, where now people get to know the brand, get to click on the page, and also get to see and want to know us. And you know, some people have come back and said, look, I have a quiet Instagram page, it's got no pictures. So and you're like, what does that look like? But they do, there's like no following. And they're on there, and just to see brands that they actually now want to interact with, because some of them are turning to see that, look, this is a way of life, whether you want to ignore it or not. My mom tried to friend me on Instagram. I said, no, stop it now. It's not gonna happen. Stop it. You know, but it showed me something, that even people of her age do have the phones we have, do have the, you know, the devices we have. So clearly they are able to also get online. And that's kind of how, you know, you get everybody to kind of channel in. And that's what has really, really worked for us in the past year and a half, to say, get them to funnel in, you know, either way, you know, Google, YouTube, advertising, whatever it is, you know, podcasts. Now I'm doing more radio. I used to be so afraid of doing radio interviews because I'm like, you know, I'm a rambler sometimes. So I always have to calm down, focus. So now I'm doing that, and you find people again, they're listening to the podcast, they're hearing us. So it's been interesting, but there's definitely ways to get around the social media and put that, whether it's your personal brand or your business brand, out there.
Interesting, because I'd also like to touch on what became probably the word of the year last year, which you mentioned, to pivot, and how you had to pivot constantly throughout the pandemic. Roberto, I would love to ask you some points on that, on how you had to pivot your career or your personal brand through the pandemic, because you are a multi-hyphenate, you're an actress, you're a painter, you're an artist as well, you're a film director. Did these things happen naturally? Were they kind of spurred on by the pandemic? And did you have a larger strategy of how you were going to maneuver your career through the pandemic?
Well, through the pandemic, there were more eyes on screens. So, you know, so what became a factor was whether you owned your work or not, because as you may know, broadcasters largely in South Africa commission work, which means a lot of producers don't actually own the content.
I just want to pause for a moment.
So with eyes being on the screen.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, we lost you for a second. Do you mind just repeating your first couple of thoughts? Yeah, we lost you.
Okay, yeah. So I was saying, because of, you know, how the industry works, it depends on whether you own your content or not. Because throughout the pandemic, there were lots of eyes on all sorts of screens, on the phone, on the TV, yes, and so on. So I also was fortunate enough to not be doing any work that required me to be on set. I was writing. So I was able to continue working in terms of the script writing aspect of things, but also because I own my digital work, I own my documentary work, there was work I was able to license out during the pandemic. And then interestingly, some of the international streamers that we're working with came through and gave, what is the word? The money, that was the relief money? Yeah, relief, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yes. So before anything was sort of announced locally, those who were fortunate enough to be working at some of those streaming platforms were able to get a little bit of streaming money. And then with that money, then you decide, am I going to create content? How am I going to create this content? Because our biggest struggle as storytellers is owning our work. One of the people was saying how difficult it is to get money in the comments right here, how difficult it is to get money. And because of how difficult it is to get money, you end up accepting commissions, and therefore you don't own your work. So my personal plan from the beginning of my career was always to own my work. So there are a bunch of little short films, documentaries, whatever I'm able to make with whatever income I do have at that particular time, is to create a bank of work that I do own. And that was before the pandemic. It was just a question of independence, but also it was a result of being shut out of the industry as a filmmaker. People were struggling to accept me as a director, as a filmmaker. So I did have to create my own work. And in the end, it paid off because it allowed me that independence and to be able to trade my own work the way I see fit.
And now with creating your own work, well done for creating that bank. There's a question from someone in the audience who's asking what advice you would have for getting financing or funding. Besides, you mentioned streaming. Yeah, what other ways could you advise them?
Yeah, so they're asking about external investors if they don't make it
Yeah.
at the AC fundings. So there's also all the different regional fundings. There's the KZN Film Commission. There's the NFVF, the National Film and Video Foundation. There's the Gauteng Film Commission. There are banks for filmmakers, the IDC, where you loan the money and you take it back. And there's also the DTI. One of the things that I also did earlier on in the beginning, because there's sort of a tier system, so tier 3, tier 2, tier 1, and if you're at third tier, that means you're entry level, and there's so many people in that tier that are looking for money that it's highly competitive. Then tier 2, there's less people because you've produced work, and then tier 1 for the experienced. What I did to kind of skip tier 3 was use my salary to make my own work. So if I had a job, weekends, I would shoot a little bit. It took me, my web series, which is on YouTube, Women on Sex, it took me 3 years to do that. And it's like 6 episodes of 5 minutes, but it allowed me to skip the tier 3. And it also allowed me to gain trust from business investors to say, okay, here's what I'm able to do. Here's where I put it. Here's how many eyes saw it. So if you can give me this much, this is how far it can go. It's notoriously a difficult industry, obviously, to finance, but there has to be a point where you are willing to kind of stretch yourself, buy yourself the camera. There's things that you have to be able to do to make it easier for others to trust you with their money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for you, Teresa, when it comes to a kind of funding, because your funders would ostensibly be a gallery, what kind of advice would you give to an artist to help them approach a gallery or get representation or get someone to notice the art that they're producing? Particularly, this will always be a topic, but particularly because of the pandemic and how art fairs were shut down, shows at galleries weren't opening as per usual. So what kind of advice would you give to artists to get their work out there?
I think exactly what Mabato said about getting yourself out there first. So before I was represented by the gallery, I was applying for art competitions. I was applying for conferences.
Yeah.
I think it's called Black Protégés with Helena Mwambembe. We did some conferences at UNISA as well. And then we also applied for group shows. There's a great platform called Vansa where you can go in, and I think they usually post opportunities for young artists as well. So getting yourself out there first, and and then while you're in those spaces, networking, speaking to the gallerists, speaking to curators. It's great, to meet someone like Tumi and start a project with her and then work yourself through that, getting to know all, like, we can call the powerhouses in the industry, and working yourself from there, because it's difficult as a visual artist to get funding. You can apply to the National Arts Council as well. I think they have a call out now for people to apply. So there are those platforms, but you as a young artist need to put yourself out there. As the social media is not enough. You have to apply for those competitions, those residencies, and see what happens. And the more you apply, the more people will notice. Getting your portfolio together, investing in yourself first before you can expect other people to invest in you.
Yeah, I love what you said about collaboration. I think, and apart from mentoring and networking, because we haven't really touched on that, but do you think that's one of the best ways to share your work and to grow your work? Because advice and mentorship, I think, go a long way to shifting maybe your perspectives. Maybe you feel like you're stuck in a rut. Yeah, could you speak a little bit more about your collaboration with Helena and how that works?
So, you know, Helena, we're literally just like these two people at the time, so girls in the in the community that did art. We knew about each other until one day we met. I think her godmother is my uncle's baby mama. So it's like, so we have a connection. We knew about each other. Yeah. And I guess we wanted to tell the same stories, but we just didn't know how. And then when we started talking and collaborating, I think the first thing we did together was the Black Portraitures. And it was basically just us speaking about our stories and what we wanted to do with those stories. It was very difficult in the beginning because obviously no one knows you. What are you doing? What are you thinking? And then I think we, after doing so many conferences and those small shows, we ended up performing for Goodman Gallery in Cape Town, in one of the art fairs. So yes, collaborating is important because then, you know, sometimes another person will come up with a different idea, and then when you marry your ideas together, you can create something beautiful. Just like, you know, collaborating with a curator, you know, maybe the curator has a certain idea or a certain theme, and then your work fits into that work, and then from there you can launch your career as well. So collaborating, and then I think artists are collaborating all the time. I know Nelson Makomo just opened a studio space in the city. I think it's called Batu Studios. What an amazing collaboration there as well, because there is not enough galleries in the industry, especially in South Africa. So artists have to start creating their own spaces, you know, and then, you know, creating their own market as well. There's August House also doing great. So yeah, so that for me, collaboration is happening already, and it is important, especially for young Black artists, so we can own our own work and put our work out there ourselves first, and then see if the world will accept it or not.
Very, very true. This putting out our own work and collaboration. I think, yeah, for you, Kitty, when it comes to collaborating and creating your own spaces, you are a soloist, but you also have to potentially dance with a stage of other dancers. How does that work in your industry? And how do you make that work, collaborating, work for you?
So I've come to understand, because as a former senior soloist of a classical ballet company, you know, that can be very restricted, you know, to collaborate. And now that I'm independent as an artist, it's become so paramount that it's okay to cross floors. We don't always have to collaborate within our bounds, right? Like for instance, when I was Standard Bank Young Artist for 2019, it has always been my wish to cross floors, right? And I collaborated with Nduduzo Makatini, and it's work that I've always wanted to do, you know. And I think for women, it's so paramount to have intellectual property over your work, because I've come to understand within working under an establishment as a choreographer, as a creator, you're so restricted. Yeah, you can't really say what you want to say, going back to Mabatu's point. But now as an independent artist, my word, you can literally go crazy in terms of the creative perspective of your brand and your work. Because for instance, my collaborative work with Nduduzo Makatini, it's also like, you know, changed the narrative completely. So for me, collaborative work is also very important, because it also it literally gives you a different kind of challenge, and also escalates your work to another level as well, understanding your brand going forward. So it's really imperative that we do collaborations, because for me, I aspire to still do content work in the fine arts, you know, still collaborate with galleries, which is something that I would love to do as well, because it's stuff that I've got so much stuff in my head in the regard of collaborating. So for me, I'm very big on crossing floors, because yes, I come from a classical nature, which in the normal eye, for the longest time, I could never understand that while I was classically bound in a company, people would tell me, Kitty, but you're not tangible, because I'm in a westernized art form where people can't work with me. So now as an independent artist, I felt it was so imperative for me to be tangible to people that I want to work with and be tangible to people that want to work with me. And it has somehow just come together ever so beautifully and organically.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. I love that term, crossing floors, and would love to ask Ursula if you've had lots of opportunities to do the same when it comes to the diamond industry, to jewelry making, and possibly combining fashion and related industries in your work.
Yes, literally what I do now. I've had to cross from fashion to jewelry, and that had to come with me, learning diamonds, polished diamonds, learning the colors and the clarities and learning metals. I mean, it's been such a fascinating time. And so from there, you also look at it and you say, okay, so now I used to be as a fashion designer, I was self-employed, and now I'm employed, even though it's with my husband, but now I'm formally employed, and it's a whole other thing because now you're answerable to somebody else. And so, that this whole space has actually taught me so many different things, so from now, when we speak of the Shining Lights, for instance, when they called me in, I remember I spoke to Pat Dambe, one of the organizers from De Beers, and I said, why did you ask me to be a judge? I'm actually a fashion designer. I'm very new to jewelry. And she said, what you don't understand is that your knowledge of, working with a certain material and being meticulous with that material is good to help young people to be able to look at what they're doing, in detail. Because sometimes you can look at it and say, oh, I don't know jewelry, but the understanding of finer detail, the understanding of what makes a piece beautiful, what makes it wearable, what makes it usable is, across the board. So, that was one of the ways for me where I said, okay, fine. So I'm here. So I've had to cross floors many instances, and it's something that once you've channeled yourself, and once you've said, this is what I'm doing, it becomes easier and easier and easier each time you have to do it. Because every single time you're representing yourself, you're representing your abilities, and it becomes, less and less questionable as well. Because when people see you doing it, so eloquently, and they also see you doing it so masterfully, they can't question you anymore, because they say, okay, she's doing it. Okay, fine. Let's see how it goes. Because once you stand there and you're like, okay, so I have to now do some public speaking. You know what? I'm gonna do it, and then you do it, and it's like, so it's something that happens all the time, and I for one am enjoying it. It was daunting at first, but no, I'm definitely enjoying it. Yeah.
I think, Dumi, you wanted to jump in there.
Yes, I did initially, but this was at Teresa's point, but that's fine. Look, I mean, I think collaboration is really important in the work that we do. I think there's no way that we can be the experts that we are if it were not for collaboration. I think it stretches our minds. It sort of puts it stretches these boundaries that we have up on ourselves, and also in the industry. I mean, I collaborate with people all the time, and I do think that it's a very, very important thing, not just for the networking, but for skill advancing, for on many levels, really, I think, and also just to create this art industry and make it sustainable, right? Because if we are not working with each other, how do we keep an industry going, right? How does it create the jobs that we say we want to see? How does it create the finances that we say we want to see if we are not sort of collaborating with each other? So I think that, anybody who tells you that they don't work with other people, you must be a little bit suspicious of them. Really, you really should, especially not in this day and age, really. So yeah, and I think just to get back to sort of what Teresa was saying, I think it's so important to invest in yourself. I think it's very important to be visible and to be seen, right? So, and when you're seen, I'm not just saying go there and be a socialite and, you know, just drink the wine. That's also okay. But I think in terms of in the visual arts where Teresa and I are in, you know, there are a lot of art talks. You learn a lot by attending these art talks. You get to network, but you also get to understand what the industry is doing, who is doing what are the conversations, the key conversations that are happening, not just in your space, but in the space globally, right? Because also I think what tends to happen sometimes is that we do think in you know, very provincially, and we do forget that there's a big global world out there, and people are doing amazing things within sort of our field. So I think being visible, attending sort of these conferences and art talks and collaborating with other people can only enhance your career and your brand if, you know, that's what you see yourself as.
Are interested in. Some very, very valid points, Tumi. So thank you for sharing. And I know that we've kept you a little bit over time. So if you do need to pop off, please feel free to. We really, really enjoyed having you on this panel today. And on that note, I would love to just scroll through some questions and comments quickly as we open up the floor, and possibly also, kind of discover who got it right, who guessed which fun fact belongs to which panelist. So we have Coach Tabiso, who said, I love the idea of competing only with yourself. Power right there, and the fact that being emotional is not necessarily a weakness. He says Ursula is the secret joker, Dumi is a new mother, and Kitty is the saxophone player. All will be revealed at the end. And then we've got a lovely comment for Mabato from Nonsokolo. She says, I love you, Mabato. You rock my world. Fierce lady. Good afternoon to all the beautiful, hardworking ladies here, which is a lovely, lovely note to kind of close with. No questions. Let's see if I hope I haven't left anything out here. I think we addressed the issue of funding. Also for Mabato, Neo writes, as a writer, how do you deal with writer's block, burnout, especially once you have started a project and are deeply immersed in it? Mabato, if you wouldn't mind answering that.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Neo. For me, when I'm having writer's block, it's usually because I haven't interrogated the theme properly or the controlling idea. So that's what I go back to. Why this story? What am I trying to say with it? And once that's clear, it normally just flows. As for the burnout, I just rest, I sleep.
Naps are a very good strategy, I think. Sorry, I missed this. Ursula also needed to be excused. She needs to get back to work. So many thanks to Ursula for being on this panel. I'm sorry that we didn't get to say goodbye to you formally. And then to just continue, let's see, there was one more question that I think I might have missed. I just don't want to interrogating theme or controlling idea. I think maybe this is the time to reveal who was who. The vinyl collector, drum roll, was Kitty. The new mother, Teresa. The sax player was Mabato, and
I want to jump in there to say I played badly, so
but
I must not be held to that.
Otherwise, people will be phoning to book you for gigs. Okay, she's learning, she's practicing. Don't contact her for gigs. just yet. And then a beautiful comment, I think, to close off with is thank you, ladies. This has been truly inspiring and has offered great insights. And just, yeah, from my side, it's been a pleasure spending some time with you. And again, I've been a fan of all of you for a very long time. So this has been a spectacular and special session. And I would love to hand over to Her Royal Highness, Councillor Tselentle, and she would just love to wrap up with, I know, what are going to be some very wise words for all of us this afternoon. Over to you.
Thank you, Zanele.
Thank you very much, Zanele. And again, thank you to all our absolutely lovely panelists. I think this afternoon, this hour was very short. I think next year we need to advocate that at least they give us at least 2.5 hours as a minimum. But I just wanted to say, you know, I'm so happy actually that Mabato got invited, you know, as part of the panelists, because I'm hoping that a lot of, you know, I guess artists, especially in the film and video sector, you know, will be able to get to listen to what you said. And one of the reasons why I'm actually quite happy that you're here with us, Mabato, is because it's also to actually raise awareness around NAC funding. Because I think a lot of you know, artists aren't actually aware that the funding institutions, you know, for film and funding in particular, actually from a DSAC perspective, is actually the National Film and Video Foundation. So it's not necessarily the NAC. So the NAC, if you send through an application for film and production, won't actually, you know, consider that application, because we then refer them to our sister organization, which is where those applications are adjudicated from. So I think, trying to get people to, you know, and raising awareness of this, because we get a lot of, you know, producers that get upset. Why is NAC not funding us? Or NAC is not funding. And it's just because of the limitations that the institution actually has. And I mean, I'm happy to be able to have this opportunity to be able to clarify around this. We also, just to also add that we are currently, you know, we've got a call for funding that is open, and our call for funding has now been extended. It has been extended to the 17th of September. And one of the reasons was because we actually introduced some new amendments to the call for funding last week, which were related to the fact that we were previously requesting for financial statements, and now we are not requesting financial statements any longer. And you know, we're basically trying as much as we can to simplify the process so that more artists can be able to get access to this limited funding. And I think also to reiterate what I said earlier when I started to say, our sector is the least funded across even our other sister organizations. And we've all spoken, and I'm sure we've all dealt with it in some form or fashion as we've, you know, pursued our careers in the arts. And I really would like to call out, you know, for all of us in this room and many others that are listening as well, to try and see how it is that we can be able to change this, you know, situation, and to be able to attract more funding. To be able to, you know, lobby and advocate, you know, for our sector to be taken much more seriously. Because, you know, when I sit as a leader in the arts, you know, we are then looked at, and everyone is like, well, the arts, we are not, you know, funding enough. It's because our funding is limited. And there's only so much we can do to literally serve a market that is sitting and employing over 1 million people. So I really am reaching out and requesting, you know, all of us to see what it is that we can be able to do to be advocates around more funding to the arts. And ladies, they always say, if anybody can get it done, it's us women. And our voices, I think, in the various platforms that we have, need to definitely rise up to be able to articulate this challenge that we really, really are in. And in particular, I want to just say to all of you once again, thank you very much for being here. I always say it's a pity we only do these things during August, as if any other month is not important. to be able to address these issues. And I'm praying that our marketing team, and I can see, thank goodness they're still with us online, that they can be able to host these sessions on a monthly basis. And it shouldn't, just be limited to just Women's Month. We need to be able to speak more and engage more so that we can have our artists learning from, professionals and talented individuals such as yourselves. And again, to say thank you very much for joining us this afternoon and sharing your contributions, Kitty, Ursula, Teresa, Mabato, and all our other panelists that have been with us even for the last 2 sessions, because this is now the last session and we've been hosting these for the last month. So again, thank you. And Zanele, we can't thank you enough. You facilitated, all our sessions from the beginning of the month. And you really, really have done an absolutely amazing job and just bringing out the voice and bringing out the stories and the experiences that I think a lot of people wanted to hear from all the panelists that we've had over the last couple of weeks. And with that, ladies, please have a lovely afternoon and enjoy the balance of the Women's Month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to NSC as well. Cheers, everyone.
Stay safe, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.